Namaste. Welcome to our 34th talk on the Gita. We'll backtrack a bit. The last verse we considered was the 30th verse of the 6th chapter. He who sees me everywhere and sees all things in me, I am not lost to him, and he is not lost to me. That means God can keep communicating with us. The connection hasn't been broken. Now, by sadhana, this comes about. We may have our eyes closed, but our inner sight develops and our sensitivity develops. Therefore, we have an awareness of spirit that we didn't usually have before. We have it to a degree we didn't have before. And that's not losing sight of. Means not losing our perspective gained in sadhana, but and not losing that understanding, that insight, that inner sight. And therefore, neither we nor God lose track of each other. Now, I mentioned my friend Elwood Decker, who, as I said, met Yogananda Giri in the 1920s. He told me a very interesting thing. He said that Yogananda Giri would, for his students in classes, play the Veena. And he said, as when he played the Veena, it was like huge blocks or cubes of consciousness kept opening up, and our whole awareness just became incredibly expanded just at the sound of his playing. You see, because the master is a master at all times, and everything he does is a master work, you might say. And everything about that person will be uplifting. So it says then, he sees me everywhere, everything in me. And it can happen by many things. Now, everywhere else in the world, things are divided into spiritual and secular, spiritual, religious, and worldly. But it isn't so in India. In the true culture, in the true civilization, it's all an expression of a spirit. Now, people can degrade it to where they only see the material part of it. And that's just what they like. But everything, the music is set up that way, the art, dance, all of these things are a reflection of an illumined consciousness, at least if we trace it back far enough. Now, Ravi Shankar was quite well known in the West. He was a sitar player. And he had a brother, Uday. Uday was a great dance master in Indian classical religious dance. And Uday Shankar brought a troupe of dancers from India, and they're in California, actually in Hollywood. They performed in a theater. And of course, the dances they did were all religious dances. Some, of course, he could introduce, explain a little and so far, but still all the things and the subtleties he didn't. But you see, you and I are potentially omniscient. So the audience sat there, and when they took it all in, they were learning a tremendous amount, though they didn't realize it. Elwood had a very purified mind, and therefore he was more responsive. And he said that he was really moved by the whole recital. He said it was, again, it was a spiritual experience, it was a divine experience. So the next day in the morning for breakfast, he went to uh, a little diner, kind of a rundown little place near where he lived. And he went in and he sat down at the counter. And he said the waitress was this really slovenly, unattractive woman. Her clothes were all disarray. They were dirty, actually. And through the big window, the hatch where the food would be handed out from the kitchen, there was a cook who had a cigarette coming out of the corner of his mouth in an old ripped up, dirty t shirt. Uh, well, looking like when the most daring of people, when I was little, used to say, looking like hell. And he said that he looked at them and thought, sort of, and then suddenly, that man with the cigarette was Shiva, and that waitress was Shakti, the divine mother power of the universe and the divine father consciousness. And he said he saw it clearly. They were like as incarnations of divinity itself. And he kept all the way till he got up, and I guess he left God a tip until he went and left. Because his mind had been shaped the night before. So if we shape our mind, we can come to have a holier perspective. I remember very much what it was like when suddenly I was struck by lightning and I realized these cardinal truths. And then I thought, what am I going to do with myself? And thank heaven, I read the Bhagavad Gita and it told me where I was and where I ought to be going. And explained all this. And my whole perspective on every aspect of my life changed. I mean, really changed. And I could see things in a much deeper and a more, well, sense, vital and valuable way. And I could look at people that I wouldn't have disliked, but I would kind of just, and I realized even though this behavior is certainly not evil, but it's just sort of, might think sort of indicative of not particularly conscious person and so on. Yet divinity is there and it's moving forward through that. Everybody here, when I walked across the campus, everyone is on the path to God. But I didn't just believe it intellectually. I could experience it. Feel isn't even adequate enough word. And so people I'd figured were kind of dunkheads, and I realized, no, but they have a great value. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I grew up in a religion where people got saved, and supposedly the whole world was made new. But in a sense, knew that that didn't happen for them, but it had happened for me. And it will happen for everyone, of course. He established in unity. This is important. Established in it. No matter how things look, we understand, no, there is the one reality behind it. And everything that happens to us, we realize there is a purpose, there is a meaning. And if I put my mind to it, perhaps I'll see the purpose and meaning. If I don't, well, later on I will. But you become a totally different person in a sense when you really are yoga yukta, joined to yoga and joined to your higher self by yoga. He established in unity worships me, dwelling in all things. It's true, everything is seen as holy. Whatever be his mode of life, and he doesn't mean he can be a robber for a living, but whether, he's a great scholar or whether he just simply goes out and, or he's a gardener or whatever, a school teacher, whatever, it doesn't matter. Whatever is the mode of life, that yogi ever abides in me because God is all pervading. So where will you go to be away from God? He who judges pleasure or pain by the same standard everywhere that he applies to himself. In other words, you may like it, but you can say, I shouldn't like it. You see, you can take drugs and have a euphoric experience, but you shouldn't do it. You can get mildly drunk and just feel kind of mellow and so on, but you shouldn't. There's the right way to get mellow. There's a right way to get at peace. And the intelligent person who's a yogi knows that. So he also says he looks on what he used to like and what he used to dislike and evaluates them in the light of what he now knows. It doesn't mean they're big. He'll change his mind about everything, but there are some things that he may. Because our evaluation is extremely important because it comes from our buddhi, our intelligence, and which is our insight. So the yogi sees and values things completely different from the way other people do. They talk about being indifferent. If the yogi says the purpose is to get there to the divine vision, and he sees something that doesn't have anything to do with that, he doesn't say, oh, it's trash, get away from it. No. But whereas before he might have thought, oh boy, junior racing cars, he thinks, well, I can live without. So he who judges pleasure or pain by the same standard everywhere, that he applies unto himself, that yogi is deemed the highest. He's the best of the yogis. He doesn't work miracles or have visions and talk to God and look at the past and see the future. So then, Arjuna has a question. This yoga, which is taught by you, characterized by evenness of mind, well, he's got that right. In other words, stability of mind. I do not see how it endures, owing to the mind's restlessness. That's right. In other words, one moment you feel just fine and at ease, the next moment you can be restless. You can be enjoying yourself. Somebody yells fire. Well, you jump up, you get out of the building. So the thing about us is change. We're never unchanged. Our true being is never changing. But there's nothing about us. All of our five bodies and all of the elements in which we are, and those bodies are comprised, are always changing. I remember a friend of mine used to say, of course, he was used to druggy people at that time. We're talking about 60s, 70s, 80s. And he said, people come to me and they want to impress me by saying, I've been changing a lot lately. I've been going through a lot of changes. And he said, if they wanted to impress me, they'd say, I'm not going through any changes lately. Of course, the implication being that they were in that which they fully, perfectly needed in their true self. And so nothing changed. They were stabilized. They were steadfast in that. And so it is. So he says, the teaching is evenness of mind through yoga. But he says, I do not see how it endures. And in the beginning, true, we meditate and we feel so quiet and peace and we see it so nice. And then we go out and somebody says, hey, get out of the way, or something happens to us, and then our mind had been kind of a rag flapping in the wind before it goes back to being a rag flapping in the wind. But that's to be expected. But the rag gets mended, and the wind stops flapping. Not overnight, however. So Arjuna continues. We're all good at diagnosing what's wrong with us. The mind is truly unstable, troubling, strong, and unyielding. I believe it is hard to control, as hard to control as the wind, which of course it's impossible to control. So Krishna says, the 35th verse, without doubt, the mind is hard to control and restless. But through practice, the word in Sanskrit is Abhyasa. It means just doing the daily work. As one theosophical lady said to me once, plod rhymes with God. And it's really, that's the way it is. You walk, you walk, you walk, and then you're there. Even if it takes you a long time, eventually you're there. So, through practice, through doing, and dispassion, vairagya, having a sensible perspective on things, to think that what we once valued has either much less value or no value or negative value, we should avoid it. Oh, I just like to see a good movie every so often. Nothing wrong with going to the movies, but there's a lot more satisfaction to be gained than going to the movies. When you have something better, you will leave the lesser. Fake philosophy, fake religion has nothing better to offer you, but they badger you. You should stop doing that. But in yoga, you find something better, and then you leave the lesser aside. But it takes doing, doing, doing. The yogis have a saying, in fact, Yogananda cites it in his autobiography, bonnet, bonnet, banjai, doing, doing, done, or making, making, made. That's it. How do you get to the end of the path? You walk the path. Then you're there. I remember somebody wrote to me a letter when I was in India who pretended to be a religious aspirant, a spiritual aspirant, and who realized it would be very good for him to go to India and have the company of great saints, especially such someone like Anandamayi Ma, who was even beyond what you could call a saint. So, of all things, I get this letter, and it says, I want to come to India, but how do I get there? That was it. That's what it said. Now, this man was what, in those days, in our slang, we called a mess off. You know, there are a lot of people, they like to fool around, they like to pretend. Oh, what would it be like if I did decide to become religious? So they come and they listen to the yogi talk, but they're just window shopping. So he wrote and said, how do I do it? Well, I wrote back and I said, you decide to come to India. You get a passport. You get an Indian visa. You buy a plane ticket. You go to the airport. You get on the plane. You stay seated on the plane. When the plane lands, you get off and you're in India. I'm happy to tell you that I didn't hear from him again. A lot of people like to waste your time as yogi. Don't let them do that either. They want to study you like an exotic bug. And they'll find out, ooh, he's a yogi. So, but they want to entertain themselves. And you're not a dancing bear, so don't dance. All right then. Let's go again to the 36th verse. I agree that yoga is difficult to attain by him whose lower self is uncontrolled. But by him whose lower self is controlled, by striving by right means, and there is the thing. Buddha, you see, when he outlined the path, he didn't say just meditation, so on. He said right meditation. Every single right conduct, you see. So, Krishna says, yes, it's difficult, but you can control the lower self by right means. And that again, it's sadhana. It's not affirming, saying, oh, I am the self, I am the self. Therefore, I do not care for that. Oh, I know this will cause me sorrow in the future. Oh, come on. No. Meditation, 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 meditation. By that, it is possible to attain it. And that's the end of that segment of Krishna's instruction. Now, lest you be wondering and worrying, I will ease your anxiety by telling you Arjuna is going to come up with another question. You see, there are some people, it never ends. So, however, you see, someone can ask a stupid question, but an intelligent person can give an intelligent answer to the stupid question. So, let's get ready for wisdom from Krishna. And then get ourselves moving along the way to wisdom. So, namaste. Until next time.